The church was filled with music, laughter, and the sweet smell of flowers. Guests turned their heads as the bridesmaids in their soft pastel dresses glided down the aisle, one by one, carrying bouquets of white roses. My son, Daniel, stood at the altar, tall and handsome, his black tuxedo fitting perfectly. He kept adjusting his tie nervously, glancing at the church doors, waiting for his bride. It was supposed to be the happiest day of his life. And for me, as his mother, it was supposed to be my proudest. I had spent months planning, helping, and supporting Daniel and his fiancée, Clara. She had seemed like the perfect daughter-in-law, kind, polite, and affectionate. Or at least that was what I thought. The organ music slowed. The priest smiled and leaned toward the crowd. "Where is the bride?" he asked warmly, his voice echoing across the hall. Everyone turned to face the great wooden doors. The moment had arrived. Daniel's smile widened, his eyes glistening with anticipation. And then, the doors opened. Clara walked in. But she wasn't walking alone. My heart stopped, my throat tightened, and my knees nearly gave way. Because Clara, dressed in her flowing white gown, was holding the hand of my husband, Daniel's father. Gasps filled the church. People whispered in disbelief. Daniel's smile froze, then crumbled into confusion and shock. I gripped the pew in front of me for support, my nails digging into the polished wood. I couldn't breathe. What was happening? Clara, radiant in her wedding dress, did not even glance at my son. Instead, she looked up at my husband, Richard, with an expression that made my stomach turn. It wasn't the look of a bride walking toward her groom. It was the look of a woman who had already chosen another man. And that man was my husband. The entire church was in chaos. Some guests stood, others covered their mouths. Daniel's best man swore under his breath. My sister-in-law looked straight at me, her eyes wide with pity. But the worst part was the calmness on Richard's face. He didn't look guilty. He didn't look ashamed. He held Clara's hand firmly, like he had every right to. Daniel finally found his voice. "Dad, Clara, what the hell is this?" The priest stammered, clutching his Bible, unsure whether to continue or stop. Clara squeezed Richard's hand and stepped forward. Her voice was clear, confident, almost rehearsed. "There won't be a wedding today. Because I love someone else." My son's face turned pale. His mouth opened, but no words came out. And then Richard, my husband of 25 years, spoke. "She loves me." The church went silent. It was like every sound had been sucked out of the air. My ears rang, my chest tightened. I wanted to scream, to cry, to faint. But I couldn't move. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. But it was. 3 months earlier, Clara had started coming to our house often to plan the wedding with me and Daniel. She would sit at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, discussing flowers, colors, guest lists. She was sweet, almost too sweet. I trusted her. I welcomed her into our family. But now, standing there in front of everyone, I realized what had been happening behind my back. Every late-night text my husband received. Every sudden, business trip. Every strange silence when I entered the room. I had ignored it all, brushing it aside as paranoia. And now the truth was parading down the aisle in a white wedding dress. My son stumbled back from the altar, his hands trembling. No, this can't be happening. Clara, please, tell me this is some kind of sick joke." Clara turned her gaze on him, soft but firm. "I'm sorry, Daniel. I tried to love you the way you deserved. But my heart," she looked at Richard, "belongs to him." The words stabbed through me like knives. Daniel shook his head violently, his voice breaking. "He's my father. You can't, this is wrong, Clara. Dad, how could you do this to Mom? To me?" Richard's jaw tightened. He looked at Daniel as though he was the one being unreasonable. "Love doesn't choose, son. It just happens." The audacity of those words nearly made me collapse. Love, was that what he called betrayal? The priest closed his book, muttering a prayer under his breath. Some guests started leaving, unable to watch the spectacle any longer. But others stayed, too stunned to move, whispering and recording everything on their phones. Daniel dropped to his knees at the altar, clutching his head in his hands. My heart shattered for him. And for myself. I had lost a husband. My son had lost a bride. And all in one moment. I wanted to scream, to march down that aisle and tear them apart. But my body betrayed me. I stood frozen, my hands trembling, my chest heaving. My world was crashing down, and I was powerless to stop it. Richard and Clara continued walking, down the aisle, past the shocked guests, past the destroyed wedding decor, past everything Daniel and I had built together. They walked out of the church, hand in hand, leaving devastation behind. And that was the moment I realized, this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a storm that would tear our family apart. The church emptied slowly, leaving only fragments of whispers, scattered petals, and the sound of my son's broken sobs. I knelt beside Daniel, wrapping my arms around him, but there were no words to ease the pain. His entire future had been stolen in a single moment. "I don't understand, Mom," he whispered hoarsely. "How could they do this to us? To us?" He was right. It wasn't just his betrayal, it was mine too. But deep inside, something darker stirred. I wasn't just broken, I was angry. That night, our home felt like a grave. Daniel locked himself in his room, refusing food, his sobs muffled behind the door. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched dinner. The chair opposite me was empty now. Empty of Richard's presence. Empty of 25 years of marriage. My phone buzzed. A message. From Richard. Greater than, "You'll understand one day. Don't call me. Understand." The man I shared my life with had run away with a woman young enough to be his daughter, our son's bride, and he wanted me to understand. My hands shook as I threw the phone across the room. Days turned into weeks. Gossip spread like wildfire. Neighbors whispered. Friends avoided eye contact. The scandal was everywhere, on social media, in hushed conversations at the market. I was the wife who lost her husband to her son's bride. Daniel refused to leave the house. His friends tried to visit, but he pushed them away. He stopped answering calls. At night, I heard him crying through the walls, and it tore me apart. I tried to be strong, but I was drowning too. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw Clara in her wedding dress, holding Richard's hand. Why? Why him? Why betray Daniel like that? The question consumed me. And then one afternoon, I got my answer. I was returning from the grocery store when I saw them. Richard and Clara. Together. Walking out of a lawyer's office downtown. She wore sunglasses, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. At first, I thought it was a trick of the eye. But then reality slammed into me. Her stomach wasn't flat anymore. She was pregnant. And not just pregnant, already showing. My heart stopped. No wonder she had abandoned the wedding. No wonder she had chosen Richard. She wasn't just his lover. She was carrying his child. That night, I told Daniel. He stared at me, his eyes red and hollow. No, Mom. Don't say that. She wouldn't. She would. She has. The truth broke him further. He punched the wall until his knuckles bled. I hate him. I hate her. They destroyed everything. He screamed. I held his shaking body as he collapsed into my arms again. But inside, a storm was building. They had taken my husband. They had taken my son's happiness. And now, they were building a new life, while ours lay in ruins. I couldn't let it end like this. Weeks later, Richard called. His voice was calm, almost smug. I wanted to tell you first, he said. Clara and I are getting married. It's the right thing to do now, with the baby. The baby. His baby. And you expect me to congratulate you. I spat. I expect you to move on. Daniel will, too. One day. My blood boiled. Move on. After stealing everything from us. No. This wasn't over. The day of Richard and Clara's wedding arrived. Smaller, quieter, without the grandeur of Daniel's ruined ceremony. Few dared to attend, afraid of being seen. But I went. Not as a guest. Not as family. As a storm. When the priest asked the familiar question, "Do you take this man?" I stood up. My voice cut through the hall like a blade. She already did. On the day she was supposed to marry my son. Gasps erupted. Richard's face drained of color. Clara clutched her belly, trembling. Daniel wasn't with me, but my presence was enough. The shame, the whispers, the glares from guests, they shattered the illusion of their new life. I left before the ceremony could finish, but I knew I had planted seeds of doubt in everyone's minds. Seeds that would haunt them forever. Time passed. Richard and Clara's relationship rotted quickly. She gave birth, yes, but motherhood did not erase her guilt. She was young, restless, and trapped with a man old enough to be her father. Whispers followed them everywhere. Friends abandoned them. Richard lost respect at work. Meanwhile, Daniel slowly began to heal. It wasn't easy, but pain turned into strength. He found a new job, met new people, started building a life beyond betrayal. And me, I stopped being the woman who lost everything. I became the woman who survived. Because while they chose deceit, I chose dignity. And dignity lasts longer than stolen love.